No one warned me that retirement could feel unsettling, not financially, emotionally. I remember one morning sitting outside in Spain in my garden, coffee in hand, thinking, why don't I feel how I expected? On paper, everything was right. I'd planned, I'd saved, I'd made the decision. And everyone around me kept saying, you must be so excited. And I was. But underneath that, something felt different, unsettled, unanchored, like the ground beneath me had quietly shifted. And that's the part no one talks about, because retirement isn't just a practical change, it's an emotional one too. And there was that moment later in Wales that really made that clear to me, and I'll come back to that later. You expect to feel happy when you retire, and you do, but it's rarely just that. There's also uncertainty, restlessness, sometimes even a quiet sense of loss. As I say, I remember sitting on the terrace in Spain thinking, this is the life I wanted. So why do I feel adrift, unsettled? It wasn't dramatic, it was subtle, like an emotional echo you can't quite explain. And I think that's because retirement isn't just a lifestyle change, it's a recalibration of your entire life. You go from years of structure, pressure, deadlines, and that's certainly how I felt. I was massively burnt out before I decided to retire. And then all of a sudden, you have that space that you so desperately wanted. And don't get me wrong, that space is wonderful, but it also gives your mind that space to wander. And some days you feel really grateful, and other days you feel guilty for not feeling grateful enough. And sometimes you feel both at the same time. You feel gratitude and the guilt. And that contrast can be surprisingly confusing. For years, you know your place in the world. Your days are defined, people rely on you, you have meetings to attend. There's structure, purpose, direction. And then overnight, that just disappears. There's no meetings, there's no deadlines, there's no responsibilities, there's nobody waiting on you to make decisions on how they're going to carry on in their day. And what surprised me most wasn't just the loss of work, it was something much quieter and honestly much harder. That feeling of, who am I now? I remember waking up one morning in Wales. It was raining, of course. And I realised I didn't have anywhere I needed to be or anything I needed to do. And instead of feeling that sense of freedom at last, I actually felt a little bit discarded, like I didn't have any value. I wasn't sad about that exactly. It wasn't like a sinking feeling, but it just made me feel really unsure about what the future held for me. Because whether we realise it or not, work does give us identity, and it's a really strong one. It gives us that sense of contribution, and when that disappears, it leaves a gap. And that space that has been left doesn't fill up overnight. For me, it took me time to understand that my value didn't disappear along with my job title. But I have to admit that that transition is a process, and it's not a switch that just switches on. And this is the moment that I mentioned earlier, one that really stayed with me, the silence. Life becomes quieter when you retire. There's fewer conversations, less interaction, less noise. And sometimes that feels really peaceful and it's lovely. But sometimes it feels isolating and lonely. In Spain, The silence is warm. I have the distant hum of a tractor or the birds, or maybe the crickets on the land. It's quiet, but there's a sense of it being alive. But in Wales, especially in winter, the silence feels different. It's heavier somehow. I remember one evening, it was winter, so it was dark by 4:30. My husband was away visiting his elderly parents in Surrey, and I realised that I hadn't spoken to anybody all day. Not one person. And that's when it hit me. This is the part no one prepares you for. Because when you leave work, you don't just lose tasks, you lose all those little moments. The quick chats over coffee, the little in-jokes that you all share, the tiny little daily connections, catching up on, your work colleagues' families and friends and activities that they're doing, as well as the project stuff that they're also collaborating with you on. And you don't realise how much those actually matter, how much stimulation you get from those little daily interactions until they're gone. I'm really curious, actually, if you're already retired, what most surprised you about retirement? And if you're planning your retirement, what are you most worried about? I'd really love to know. Here's what I've learned. You don't replace your old life overnight. You rebuild slowly, gently, day by day. And it takes some time and it takes intention. For me, it started with small things, creating a new morning routine, getting up, having a coffee, walking the dog, doing some small yoga stretches just to get the old body working. And then maybe a bit of a potter around. And then I would come and maybe do some work on my YouTube channel. Also, having a place in Spain and in Wales helped to build some kind of rhythm between our travelling between the UK and abroad. I also let myself enjoy slower days where I didn't have a plan for the day. I just let it be what it was going to be and take me where it was going to take me. And I didn't feel guilty about those quieter, slower days. As I said, starting a new project, and that was some renovation to our Spanish property and this channel, actually gave me a sense of purpose again, an outlet for my creativity, an outlet for my drive to continue learning. In essence, it wasn't just one big decision. It was lots of small ones that built up over time. And those little small choices and those small decisions began to add up. And I started to feel more grounded, a bit more like myself again, just a different version. Because retirement isn't a finish line, and so often you spend years thinking, when I retire, I've got to retire, I've got to make sure I've got enough money in the bank, I've got to make sure that I've got a date that I'm working towards, I need to understand what I'm going to do, when I'm going to do it, who I'm going to do it with. And then you get to retirement and it's then kind of, oh, now what? Because it's not a destination, it's a transition, and transition takes time. Some days you'll feel settled and some days you might feel a little bit lost. And that's completely normal to feel both of those things, even at the same time. What matters most is that you just keep moving forward gently, building a life that fits with who you are now. If you felt any of this, I hope this reassures you that you're not alone and you're not doing retirement wrong. You're just experiencing the part that no one really talks about. That retirement, on the one hand, is wonderful and freeing, and it gives you the space that you've been yearning for to try different things. But on the other hand, it's full of uncertainty and discomfort. It's not familiar. And so you have to balance that out and just accept that the yin and yang of retirement is exactly that. I'm Angela, this is Two Homes, One Life, and in my next video, I want to talk about something I genuinely believed before I retired. That was that I would feel this overwhelming sense of freedom. But the reality, as I've just touched on, was a little different. So if you're navigating this transition or you're thinking about it, make sure that you're subscribed so that you don't miss that next video. And if this resonated with you, please share your comments below and let me know what your experience has been like, because you never know, there may be somebody else who really needs to hear that right now. So all that's left for me to say is thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.